Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
All right, Rob Browne here with you on this Saturday morning edition of Sidelines. Got a great lineup today. Got a new guest, Josh Graham, WSJS over in Winston, Salem. Going to fill us in on Wake Forest, number 1 seed Deacons out in the College World Series in Omaha. Doug Dean checks in momentarily. He is on special assignment in Tuscaloosa, so look forward to having him. Frank Duffy checks in a little bit shortly, live from Omaha aboard Bengal 1. Imagine every night up there is a big party, and he just checked in. He's doing some maintenance work on the RV. Be ready to go here in about 5 minutes. Kevin Scarbinsky, the Birmingham lead, coachsafely.org, checks in with us about 34 after, top of hour number 2. Franz Beard, GatorBaitMedia.com, will check in with us from down in Gainesville. There's a lot to talk about today. College World Series is underway, and if you've got color TV and you weren't living under a rock or in a cave, you saw some really good baseball in the 9th inning last night, Josh, and got a chance to talk to you yesterday. And again, welcome to Sidelines. Look forward to having you on. I've been following Wake Forest a long time, and we're getting more and more. We cover the ACC. We've got some great guys, but don't have anybody that covers Wake Forest and the whole league. And you can talk to us hopefully about Virginia as well. But welcome aboard, and it's a great time of year, isn't it?
Well, it's a great time of year unless you're the team blowing the run in the 9th inning, like Virginia last night. And Coach O'Connor, it was shades of 2 years ago, where I'm sure you were following in SEC circles when Virginia entered the 8th inning with a 4-run lead against Mississippi State and gave up a 6-run 8th and ended up losing that game in Omaha 6-5. Now, Wake Forest and Virginia are the 2 ACC programs that have ever won a national championship. Quite a bit of difference between the 2 years that it happened. 1955 for Wake, which is the last time they were in Omaha, and the Wahoos winning it in 2015. But those are the 2 ACC teams, and it is great to be in Omaha if your team is winning in Omaha. And unfortunately, Virginia was not one of those teams.
Watching that game last night, the 9th inning, Florida, the back-to-back home runs, get the bases loaded. That was, 2 games like that. It's unusual to see that. The regular season, Wake Forest has been dominant. We saw what they did to Alabama. Alabama was a 16 seed in the regional. Wake Forest has been a dominant number 1. That is a strong league. Clemson had won 17 in a row. Tennessee goes down there and gets one out of there. Virginia, again, a perennial power, national power in baseball. Talk about the rest of the league and what Wake Forest did there. We know, but outside of the league, who did they play that may have prepared them for Omaha? Because they look to be strong on all levels.
This is not just your normal number 1 seed going into the tournament. This is what I've been told by scouts and experts to be one of the best college baseball teams we've seen in recent memory, where they have a plus 59 run differential going into Omaha, which has never happened before for a team going to Omaha. That's just unheard of, and they haven't lost a game. They won every ACC series. To your point about how strong the conference is, it's the 2nd strongest conference in college baseball. It's been that way for a little while. I think the SEC and the ACC separate themselves as the best conferences in college baseball. So I think Wake has been tested by its own conference, out of conference, Coastal Carolina. Wake Forest took a couple of games against them in the regular season. They're well tested, but with all that being said, this is the first time this group's been to Omaha, and they're playing a team today that's been to 3 consecutive College World Series. So if you have any concerns about stage or jitters or complacency, that's all there for a program that really circled getting here as the goal. And we'll see how hungry they really are now that they're there.
Yeah, and week in and week out, 2 years ago, Arkansas won every series in the regular season, all 10 in the SEC, and they won in Hoover. But they didn't get there. I think NC State beat them in their regional, and that was horrible what happened. NC State not getting to go because Tommy Kane Mr. Wolfpack, who's on our show with us a lot over in Atlanta, been on the ACC. He used to do ACC road trip. You probably saw him doing that for a long time. And and then Arkansas fans still have a little PTSD about the missed foul ball in the 2018 World Series. It sticks with you for a long time. But yeah, this one of the best teams of all time, 59-run differential. Doug Dean, this Josh Graham, WSJS over in Winston-Salem. First time he's on Sidelines. Like I said, we talked to you yesterday, and Tom Hamilton, your station manager, big fan of yours. I talked to a lot of radio. Yeah, he is. We talked to a lot of radio station program directors, station managers, and whatever, all over the place. I had met one like that was so proactive. He called us back. Couldn't have been more helpful, provided all the information and said, hey, check him out on the show. And we linked you in and listened to the show in my truck yesterday for about 45 minutes. You know you're split. I can tell you that right now. Doug Dean, talking about this Wake Forest baseball team. The Demon Deacons are demons. Unmute. Whoa. Sorry about that. Yeah.
Are we
Doug,
muted?
go ahead. I'm sorry. I had you muted. Yeah.
All right, you got me now?
Yeah, we're good.
Very good. Sorry about that, Audrey. Josh, I'm curious, and I know Rob's listeners are. Tell us about the personality. I mean, we all understand Wake Forest had the most compelling season. They were hard to get a W against those guys. But when you go to Omaha, you've seen teams over the years. Some of them are ready for it mentally. Some of them, maybe the lights are a little brighter. What's the personality of this team? Is there swagger, or is that something they're going to have to discover as they get into the beef of this World Series?
It's not swagger, Doug. They are the pretty girl that doesn't know they're pretty yet. Like in the movies where you're just like, wait until the final 10 minutes of this show. We don't realize that Katie Holmes is attractive. She's just like the friend that's there on the side. That's Wake Forest. Like they are this juggernaut. They are this historically great team, but you wouldn't know it by being around them. They just have this looseness to them and this, man, we're just trying to get to Omaha and do something that no one's done before in our lifetime. And now that they've done it, the only concern I have, it's a couple of concerns actually. It is this complacency piece of everybody around you has told you that the goal is to get to Omaha, and now you're there. Is the hunger the same when you play a team that's been to 3 straight College World Series and Stanford? On paper, Wake Forest is better than Stanford is. We know that. They're the number 1 team in the country. They have the number 1 ERA in America by almost a full run. Like it's unheard of, and they play in a pitcher's park or a hitter's park. Like everyone say, oh man, it's not going to be like Winston-Salem where the ball's flying out. Well, then how can you explain the ERA that they have playing in that park for most of the year? But with that in mind, the park being so long in Omaha and those fences being so long, the stadium playing as big as it does, that might be an equalizer, because really the huge difference between Stanford and Wake is that Wake's ERA is literally half of what Stanford's is. Stanford is 128th in America in ERA, dead last out of the 8 teams that are in Omaha. But if the park can keep some of those long balls in that otherwise would be out in every other college stadium, that could serve as a bit of an equalizer. Those are the 2 concerns for Wake Forest. It's the ballpark, and Tom Walters talked about it, Wake's coach this week, about how you have to, have a different approach when it comes to ball flight. And it's just the overall approach that you have, the bright lights, the stage, and how hungry you're going to be now that you're finally there.
And that makes me think a team like Wake, as you described, that's a beautiful take. And I appreciate your analogy of the way to go early in your dating years is to be fortunate to date a girl that doesn't know she's gorgeous yet, right? Usually doesn't go well following that period. But it may be that any team in this series, it's critical to win your first game. But that might be doubly so for Wake Forest. Do you agree with that?
I do. Because you're in a region that has the preseason number 1, number 2, number 3, and number 6 teams in the country, and Wake Forest was the number 6. So on that other side, regardless of what happens in this game, you're going to be playing LSU or Tennessee. And if you get out of that game, okay, well, then you got to either play Stanford, LSU, or I mean, you look everywhere else. There's no there's no comfort. There's no relief. And if you lose your first game, well, then good luck. You're going to have to win how many in a row? 5 in a row, 4 in a row, in order to get to the College World Series as a final series. That doesn't really seem like the best recipe.
What about the Deacon fans? We're going to have Frank Duffy, a big LSU guy, in our ear momentarily. And the LSU fans are no stranger to going to Omaha. The Deacon fans shown up in large numbers.
We often say about Wake Forest, they're the few, they're the proud in terms of the how big the school is. It's the smallest Power 5 school in America. Like, you're talking about like a student, like a student population of about 5,000. In fact, a fun fact I was telling all the Alabama folks last weekend when they were in Winston-Salem, and it's just true, you can fit every living Wake Forest alum inside the football stadium and still have some room left in it. But with that said, there is that Twitter page that's out there about the Jello shot challenge that they do out in Omaha. And if you've checked the board recently, it's LSU and Wake Forest neck and neck in terms of those who are, putting down some Jello shots. And it should be noted that neither of those two teams played yesterday. So they should be behind the 8 ball, so to speak, from the teams that got in earlier than they did. So if that's any indicator, the Jello shot indicator, as I call it, then I think LSU, Wake Forest might be destined for a Monday night winners bracket meeting.
That'd be a biggie.
Yeah, you don't want to get in that losers bracket. I think I saw the stat last night watching that Florida-Virginia game. Only 4 of the last 41 College World Series champions lost or won after losing their first game. Also, speaking of Wake Forest, the only other school that is smaller in the Power 5, well, I guess I'd say Division I. Tulsa's smaller, but they're not in the Power 5. But what Wake Forest does, you're right, the few, the proud. But you talk about the triad where you are over there. Is that Winston-Salem, Greensboro, and Hickory?
High Point.
Okay. Hickory. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I've got a son living in Charlotte, and I used to go to Camp Deerwood up in Asheville. Well, Brevard, north of Asheville. They probably closed that thing down. Probably the state made. It was like a detention camp, but it was a lot of fun. Love going over there. What about this Wake Forest team? You watch baseball all over the country. The SEC, the ACC. I mean, Georgia Tech is a very familiar opponent, but you don't see Wake Forest playing a lot of the schools in the league. Would you like to see more intersectional play? Because SEC and ACC share pretty much the same geographic footprint at what they call Braves country.
Yeah, I'd love to see more of the regional teams play each other. In fact, you're talking about Tobacco Road, you're talking about basketball country. We're expecting later this month to get the ACC SEC Challenge basketball matchups, and that's the first time that's going to be played. And the ACC has done the ACC Big Ten Challenge for so many years, and I don't think there's going to be the same energy for that as there is for the ACC SEC Challenge. I think there's going to be more. I think having opponents that are driving distance, like you think about South Carolina, who used to be in the ACC. You think about obviously Georgia Tech, and you think about all these rivalries that exist, these cross-conference rivalries. That applies to, it's what makes college sports great in the sense that it's not really necessarily about the sport itself or the guys who are specifically out there. It's about the laundry. It's about the history. It's about the colors. Yep. And yeah, absolutely. Whether it's baseball, football, basketball, sign me up for having those teams play each other.
Yeah, and I'm with you. And I know you just got a few minutes. We're going to get you back on here again.
Sure.
Wake Forest goes out there, and the school like that wins the national championship, the College World Series. That means the world to you. And we know all the stuff going on about conference expansion and change and everything like that. Your alumni it's a private university. So baseball, I mean, you're good. You're good in football. You won 10, 11. I mean, Sam Hartman's gone, but they've got a hell of a program. Must be a hell of an alumni base that really puts a lot of money into the program, to the university first.
They got, they're donors. They have pretty wealthy alumni that go to Wake Forest University. It's a really good school. So it is the few of the proud, but those proud are very proud. And you talk about history. For about a 20-year stretch in basketball, the only programs that won more in the ACC in the 90s and 2000s than Wake Forest were named Duke, Carolina, and Maryland. Like, you're talking about the school of Tim Duncan and Chris Paul. You're talking about the school that in football or in basketball in the past couple of years have had the ACC Coach of the Year, and football had the ACC Coach of the Year. This year in baseball, the ACC Coach of the Year just won a national title in women's golf and men's golf. Probably the most iconic program, with current pros like Will Zalatoris and Cam Young, but all-timers like Arnold Palmer and Kerner Strange. Like, there are a lot of programs that are successful at Wake Forest. I think actually active on the actual roster of coaches, they have 6 coaches that have won Coach of the Year in the last 2 years alone. So it's a great collection that's been put together by John Curry, who happens to be a Wake Forest alum. And if you're a Tennessee fan, you probably remember John Curry's name quite well. Mm-hmm. He's doing a really good job here in Winston-Salem.
Josh,
look, I promise. Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry, Rob, if I walked on you.
Yeah, please.
I don't want to drag Rob down with me, but generally, when you get down to these zip codes, our IQ is a little higher in football. And you can imagine why. And I'm one of those Auburn guys, but I'm just scanning last year. Wake Forest was not really a team you wanted to have on the schedule. No. I mean, they took Clemson to double overtime in a loss, which will happen. But they also beat a very good Florida State team, and didn't have the really monster year. But you make it to a bowl, and there are a lot of teams out there that their goal for initially is to be
hold those thoughts. We're going to take a quick break, and I'm just going to keep you for a couple of minutes afterwards, because that's a great question. I want to hear the answer right after this.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
Rob Browne back with Doug Dean, Josh Graham over WSJS. Winston-Salem, North Carolina, covers the Demon Deacons, Wake Forest, all things ACC. Keep going with that question, Doug, and then we'll let you go. And I want you to tag out and let people know how they can keep up with you, Josh.
Well, first I want to compliment Josh. He's, you get guys on here, Rob, and you can tell instantly if they know what they're talking about. And Wake Forest fans, few though they be rabid also, are they serious about their Demon Deacons football? Are they rabid about it?
Oh, yeah, that's probably the sport that they care about most, because you have probably the best coach that they've ever had when you consider, obviously Jim Grove about 16, 17 years ago won the ACC in 2006. They're the only in-state team in North Carolina out of the Big Four that's won the ACC since, let's go back to the late 1970s. The Wake football really, really matters here. It's going to be a real test this year without Sam Hartman and a lot of key pieces on defense to see where exactly the standard is in terms of, are you a team that can lose a lot and still make a bowl and continue the bowl streak that Wake Forest has had for years now? I think Wake could be up to that challenge, but the last couple of years being top 10 in the country a couple of times as the seasons progressed with Hartman and this offense that's unique, like not rare, unique, the way that they run this mesh point. Dave Clawson's got it going on, and Wake Forest, they have a coach that they feel is a perfect fit for them. He's not really considered for these jobs because of the way the offense looks, and he's happy with that. You look at his background, he's been going through small schools. You're talking about Bowling Green, you're talking about Fordham, you're talking about Richmond. The one time he had a foray into the SEC, it was 1 year at Tennessee when things blew up in 2008. So I don't know if there's this hunger, this desire for him to jump elsewhere. Maybe the money, and somebody will offer him something to do it himself and do it at a price he can't turn down. But he's turned down a lot of jobs, I know that, and he seems like he loves it here in Winston-Salem, and it seems like it's a good fit.
Home of the great Brian Piccolo, right?
That's right. Yeah. Brian Piccolo, Brian's song, Wake Forest, they're one of the same. There's no doubt.
You know where he's from, don't you? He played his high school football, Hollywood, Florida. And there was another running back on that team named Tucker Frederickson, who went to
Oh, yeah, great Giants.
number one pick in the draft. And Tucker talked about him. And that Wake Forest, you're right. This is cool. This is cool. Look, I know we promised we'd let you out, because if we get Frank going, we're going to want to grill you like a witness before a Senate committee on Wake Forest in this World Series, because Frank's out there right now. But I mean, if you can stay for another 10 minutes or so. But I know you got to get going. But
I got to jump. But I got one thing. I got to jump.
Yeah.
But I got one thing for Frank.
Yes,
I go to the one other FBS school that wears the colors purple and gold, the same type of purple and gold that you're wearing right now, Frank. Can you name it?
East Carolina.
You darn right, the East Carolina Pirates.
Hell yeah.
Ready, baby.
Arg.
Hey,
Arg.
not many of us can pull off purple and yellow. I mean, gold.
Hey, but you should know, Frank. Me and my wife go to new stadiums every year. This year, we're going to Baton Rouge, the Army game. So I've never been to Baton Rouge before. I'm going to be there.
But hey, Josh, East Carolina, wait for it, owes everything about their football tradition to Coach Pat Dye back in the day.
There's no doubt, Pat Dye, who coached a guy named Ruffin McNeil, who brought a guy named Lincoln Riley to East Carolina just a few years ago. So the ties are endless. Thank you guys for having me. Let's do this another time, okay?
Yeah, we will. And if a fellow wants to get him a good roast beef sandwich, where would he go, Pirate? Arby's.
Stop.
All right, let us know how they can follow you. We'll do it again.
On Twitter at Josh Graham Radio. Thank you guys. We'll see you around.
You bet. Appreciate it.
Duff,
that is good stuff,
Duff,
man.
is that the legendary RV in the background?
That's it.
Hell yeah.
That's Bengal 1.
Oh wow.
With some clean tanks. Thank you, Rob. I had to go run over there. Mama said the outhouse looks full on the computer screen. You better get it on over there. So
that Bengal 1 is going to be making the trek from Baton Rouge, well, I guess from Atlanta in your case, to Tuscaloosa for a pretty important Saturday this fall, right?
Yes. Which the last time it went in 2019, we had a really nice outcome. And frankly, the last time I didn't get to go, but the last time we played them there, we actually showed up pretty well. 2 years ago when we played at Alabama, gave them all I wanted. So, but yeah, it's always a big tilt. That's always the one that everybody at LSU circles on the calendar, and we always seem to play much better against Alabama in Tuscaloosa. It is a visitors series. At one point in time, I kid you not, I had been to 10 LSU Alabama games from 1982 on up to 2007, and I had never seen LSU lose in Tuscaloosa. That was 10 times we beat them in Tuscaloosa over those years. So hey, look, it didn't hurt. I love the old Mike years, the Mike Shula, Mike Price, Mike DuBose. Man, those were the salad days.
Think about this: from 1969 to 2001, no Alabama fan ever saw their team lose in Baton Rouge. That's the craziest streak I've ever. That streak is so weird. Only Doug can give a justifiable reason why it happened.
Yeah,
It's just Completely weird.
Doesn't make any sense.
It really does. You're exactly right. And you know, it took Saban to come in to do it, you know, and that's the funny part, you know, is just, you know, the tie-in. But no, Alabama LSU has always been a visitor series. It's just, you go there and you want, I mean, I don't have to tell you guys this, y'all are Auburn guys. You go to Tuscaloosa, you chew off your right arm in a bear trap to friggin' beat them there. And
it means something.
Oh, no kidding. And 2019, I mean, you got to remember, we had that monkey on our back ever since the national championship game in the Superdome. You know, we beat them in Tuscaloosa that year, 9-6, in the game of the century, as they were calling it. And then we lost to them in the national championship game, a game which they never should have been in. Should have been Oklahoma State, but don't get me started. Had it not been for Saban's power. But I will tell you, carrying those losses, and look back at the 2012 and the 2014 LSU Alabama game. Those two are the loudest nights I've ever spent in Tiger Stadium. The vitriol was unbelievable. That, you know, we were booing the Alabama $1 Million Band when they came on. I mean, unmercifully, right? And so because we were like, hey, we shouldn't have had to play them in the national championship. And then, of course, they curb stomped us. And we were like, wait a minute, we only 1-1. How did they get the national championship? You know, we should have a rubber match out back, you know, behind Dreamland or something. Let's go on up there and take it again. But no, it was a big day going there. You know, we had in fact, that was my first show on Rob's show. Doug, was a couple of days before that when God rest her soul, Mildred and I, Phyllis and I debated the game, and I joked with her. I said, Phyllis, for the first time, you know, in the history of this debate, I showed up with a howitzer and not a pop gun. I said, I'll debate you all you want. I said, Phyllis, have you seen our new offense? I said, we done parked that 1976 Chevy Chevette, and we got us a Ferrari with this boy, Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase and Terrace Marshall, Justin Jefferson. So, I mean, it was so fun to go there and win that game. And I mean, to this day, it was one of the funnest times I've had in a stadium on the away side.
Well, Duff, I caught up with you with no small amount of anger a couple of mornings ago following the overcooked SEC 2024 schedule reveal. It's as if somebody's going to blow up balloons and pink or blue confetti flies out. But, you know, I'd get the logic behind a weird and fun and God knows often predictive Auburn LSU series that typically over the years, and I certainly don't mean to leave Alabama, a winner of the Alabama LSU game often goes on to really big things. But there were some years that winner of the Auburn LSU series that pretended greatness.
Well, they went to the West. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, at least contending, and it was early in the year, hot as hell, no matter whether it was in Lee County or Baton Rouge. And the thing that stings about it, and I'm counting on the 9-game schedule to revive it to some extent. What stings is if you talk about building a brand, that it just means more SEC ball.
Yeah,
the Auburn LSU series, if nothing else, delivered more freaking weirdness. And wow, did that really just happen? And like time and time again, there was rarely a year you didn't have something funky and weird happen.
Well, not only the weirdness, Doug, and I agree with you, absolutely. In fact, I was so busy, you know, doing the new Tiger Air thing. Ron and I, the director of marketing of Tiger Air with the air conditioned helmets. So we were so busy that day, and I was actually getting ready to drive over to go watch LSU practice at Charles Schwab Field, that I really hadn't heard it, hadn't seen it. I was so busy working. And then when you told me, I was like, oh my God. I said, you gotta be kidding me. Now I get it. It makes sense. Texas A&M is a long time rival back in the 40s, 50s, 60s, even some into the 70s. And then we revived that rivalry in the 90s when R.C. Slocum was there, and Mike Archer, and when we had Curley. But I will tell you, you're exactly right. The bizarreness of LSU Auburn, of what's going to happen. You know, I talked about it on Rob the next day. I was like, I said I texted Doug, and he texted me. I texted him back. I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that's it. And so we were talking the next day. I mean, where on else do you get seismograph readings going off? Where do you have idiot coaches throwing 40-yard passes with 7 seconds left on the clock when you can win
and
it,
hitting it and hitting it?
Goal. Yeah, right. Yeah. Where do you have that? Where do you have the steel girders of a vaunted stadium light up like they're like a ember glow on like a cigarette in the dark in a foxhole in Normandy? Where do those things light up? Because you've got flames that are shooting 12 stories in the night air. But and by the way, I was in that stadium.
And the game played on.
Besides the game playing on, no one left the seat. That was the damnedest thing. That's where LSU is when we come to Jordan-Hare. We're up in that high area on that side in the upper deck. Now, I wasn't near it. I was on the other side. I swear to God, nobody twitched. Nobody moved. It was a great game. It was a great game going on. Somebody said, do y'all see smoke? And I was like, yeah, man, that's a Tiger running game, man. It's just causing sparks.
Yeah.
Go, no, look over there. Look toward the setting sun. I think we got a fire going on. And I'm telling you, that those flames were as high as we were in the upper deck. That's how high they were going up. And I was like, nobody moved. Nobody cared. That was the Auburn-LSU rivalry.
And who can?
I was at that game. Yeah.
Who can forget the loser leaves town game when Miles came to Auburn on a weird ending? I'm not in a position to defend the fairness of that ending, but I do want to, in tribute to the Auburn LSU series, go with me. I know you don't want to, Duff. Back to 1994. My question is, if he got the ball again, would Curly Hallman have still called another Jamie Howard pass play?
Here the bad part was, it was Lynn Amity, who was our offensive coordinator, who was a Tulane guy. He was on a Tulane football team. I said this was a conspiracy from get-go. And I'm sitting there with my really good friend Billy Roberts. Oh, Billy Roberts on the show, Doug's buddy, right? Yep. So he and I are sitting in that stadium, and I'm sitting there, and we got a big group. We got a big group of LSU Auburn people, and he's to this day he will say, he goes, I saw the veins on your neck starting to pop out, and then it kind of went up to your temporal lobe, and all you kept muttering was, run the ball. Run the ball, run the ball, run the ball, run the ball.
Well, the funny thing about that game was Lynn Amity had come from Texas A&M. He'd been on their staff. And the first one was returned for Auburn by Ken Alvis out of Demopolis, Alabama. Second one by Fred Smith out of Eufaula, Alabama. The third pick six, Brian Robinson, Deerfield Beach, Florida, Dillard High School, Fort Lauderdale. But the crazy thing, then Chris Schelling fell on a fumble in the end zone. Yeah. And I was at that game, and I was saying, that Curly Hallman, he's a smart guy. I thought he was a genius.
You liked his acumen.
I mean, I loved him.
Look, it was only 2 years after, I think it was when Win Lyle kicked that 55-yard field goal to beat also Jamie Howard. I mean, he was the quarterback. That was his first year quarterbacking.
That was Josh Etheridge, the kicker.
Yeah, I
said he looked kind of feminine.
Well, let me tell you something. He had a masculine leg because that kid kicked one from 55 yards out, a game winner, only to be matched by Cole Tracy in 2018, coming back, hitting it the other way, with time running out. Look, we could go on. I mean, I could cite the game when we intercepted, Troy Twilley intercepted when DiNardo was first year, bring back the magic. Then we could talk about Tuberville and the cigars on the Eye of the Tiger. And our band, our band was going to get into it with y'all's players. And then the next year, y'all's band almost got into it. Well, dude, you can't write this. I can sit down at my keyboard and not come up with this.
Well, we'll play again. It just won't be annual, I guess. But there's a couple missing that have to be added to the lore, Duff. One of your fans, give them credit for
the whistle.
using their
The
damn
whistle.
human
Yeah.
agency to influence a game. And Patrick Nix, I guess it was Nix, is down and about to score. The whistle goes off, and he thought the referees blew it dead, and there you go.
I heard the whistle. I was close enough to hear the whistle.
What it was Nix was in his own end zone, backed up. Auburn was having to go and he took it. That I remember, and I tell you what else, Cecil the Diesel. He ran for about 250 yards. We couldn't stop him in that 97 game.
Yeah.
But Rusty Williams, the running back from Moncks Corner, South Carolina for Auburn, got the winning touchdown there. Damian Craig, they played a hell of a battle. Now here's a guy, I guarantee you.
And Rob, that might have been, out of all the great games we had, that might have been one of the best ones.
It is. We're going to be right back. We're going to take a quick break. Got Doug Dean, Frank Duffy, Kevin Scarbinsky's been to a couple of Auburn LSU weird games. We'll be right back after this. All right, Rob Browne back here on this Saturday morning roundtable, man. We got a good one going. And want to say something real quick today. If you are out and about, Red River Ford Toyota, Wynne, Arkansas, and they are open 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. Monday through Saturday. Service department open on Saturdays, 7:30 in the morning till 12:30. Austin Futrell and the team over there, great. Rusty Howard, Justin Wynn. Everybody there has one common goal: customer service. I really mean that because I'm big on that, because I've got two businesses where it's all about the relationships. RedRiverFordToyota.com. And remember, they will deliver anywhere. You see those big trucks going with vehicles, they're delivering all over the country. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Proud to have them as a sponsor. Doug Dean, you got a comment about that weird series.
And Rob, from talking to them as many times as we have, I know they have one other common purpose: to call them hogs as often as they get the chance. Because that's what I understand from that place.
Hey, Rob.
They love them. They love all fans.
First of all, our entire ball IQ just went way up with the great Scarbinsky joining us. Hey, Kevin. And
good morning, guys.
Good morning, buddy.
Secondly, Kevin, before you joined us, I don't know if you were tuned in, but we were talking about I was weeping gently for the funeral of the annual Auburn LSU series. I understand the logic. I think basically Oklahoma had to replace LSU. And I guess we'll find out if that's a fair trade-off from a brand and fan enjoyment standpoint. I will miss LSU. That's why I'm coming to invade your territory this fall, Duff, and look forward to that. But I do want to tell you, I am friends with Curly Hallmans. If you go back to that tragic, from an LSU point of view, 1994 6 interceptions, is really 7 interceptions. But Jessica, Curly Hallman's daughter, is a good friend of mine. I do business with her company, Lockton, in Kansas City. And she was kind enough to tell me, from a daughter's point of view, how tough it is for a family. I know you say Cry Me a River, the millions of dollars these coaches make, but she said it was just vicious, and probably would have been at any fan base. I'm not picking on LSU fans, but can you imagine, like, you didn't choose to be the daughter of a big-time head football coach, and you might get to see your dad kissing that glass crystal football like Coach Saban has, but you might also get to see your dad, threatened and mistreated, and you don't understand why. Isn't it just a game? We don't often know about or hear about that part of the game.
And the children, the daughters, when Les Miles was going through his stuff, he had a really young daughter, Smacker, who's a great college volleyball player. Went on. In fact, she was very instrumental in getting him into Kansas, right? I mean, it was her efforts that really spearheaded, that, and sad how all that kind of worked out. But yeah, you're right. For the families of these coaches, they live and die with it. And fan bases, I mean, they can be vicious. And, I know, Curly was a good man. I think he got in over his skis. I think the Archer situation made a quick hire needed. And I think he would even admit, I think he was a much better position coach than being thrust into that. Because when you're a head coach, there's so much more than just the X's and O's. I mean, you got to, look, I was having bourbons last night over at the Hilton, the official hotel, and with all the boosters. And let me tell you something. That's a tough room to navigate, even just for a ham and egger like me, much less somebody that's probably got more power in the state of Louisiana than the governor and the head of the Board of Regents.
Yeah, Kevin, hearing all that, about this scheduling, and we had the big reveal party. I mean, we sound like TMZ or Hollywood Entertainment Tonight. We're talking about, in these terms, but it was on the color TV. They told who's going to play each other. What was your takeaway watching that? What did you say? Wow, this is great, or they got it wrong? But I think you had some interesting comments. Auburn playing Georgia and Alabama on the road versus splitting it up. You think there's any chance they can get that fixed?
Well, just overall, look, the SEC is very smart. They know that there's an appetite for SEC football, both on and off the field, and they turned the reveal into a television special. And I'd love to know how many people were watching. I'm sure their ratings were very high for that hour. But there were a lot of things that jumped out at me, and you guys already mentioned, losing, and maybe it's only for 1 year, maybe not, but losing the Auburn LSU game, which has given us so much content as writers, so many incredible moments to capture and try to put into words. That's sad. You hate to lose games like that. But really, the biggest, if I ordered the takeaways for me, it was Alabama, Georgia playing in the regular season. It's just amazing that since, I think I've shared this before, but since 1981, that Alabama's played as many regular season games against Penn State as it has Georgia, which is, it shouldn't happen. How does that happen? How does Alabama, they missed the Herschel Walker era. They were fortunate they didn't have to defend Herschel Walker the 3 years he was in Athens. And vice versa. Herschel didn't have to run against the Alabama defense. And it just goes on and on. I would have liked to have, so I'm glad to see that. That's a game, and think about this, guys. It's not out of the realm of possibility or likelihood. That could be a trilogy that year. You could see those teams play in Tuscaloosa, in Atlanta, and then again in Atlanta, because that's where the national championship game is after the 2024 season in January of 2025. So that jumps out. And then as far as the Auburn playing at Georgia, at Alabama, to me, they should break that up. They shouldn't play those teams. They should play them every year, of course, but they shouldn't play them both at home 1 year and both on the road the next year.
Crazy.
They can break it up if they want to. They did it before. I think Georgia had to go to Auburn back-to-back years when they after the last expansion. So I'd love to see them break that up. Auburn fans should get to see They should get to see either Alabama or Georgia in Jordan-Hare every year, and it's also better competitively too. Yeah.
Kevin, if you know, can the two schools reach their own agreement essentially to play it twice? Like Auburn would be the one that would have to do it. If I'm Georgia, I'm not touching anything. It's Auburn's problem. But Auburn could agree to play in Athens back-to-back years. Is that between the schools, or would Commissioner Sankey have to get involved?
Oh no, that's a conference level decision that would have to be made, because obviously there's a delicate balance. The home who plays. You get 4 home games, 4 road games, unless you play one of those neutral site games like Texas, Oklahoma. That was another thing that jumped out. Texas gets 4 true home games and only 3 true road games in its first year in the SEC, while Oklahoma gets only 3 true home games because they're the home team in the Red River Shootout. So they only get 3 SEC games in Norman. That's a little bit of an imbalance, and coaches are very sensitive to that, as they should be. So yeah, that kind of decision would have to be made in downtown Birmingham.
Play one game in the
there
Benz.
there is definitely, and by the way, them coming in, I don't know if y'all have sensed this already, but there is definitely a big brother, little brother thing going between our two new teams that are coming in. There's the redheaded stepchild, and there is the queen of the ball. So just if y'all picked up on it, I certainly have.
Well, look, my daughter in Richmond is listening, saying you're talking about daughters, and you're right. And you think about how much the daughters. I've got 2 boys, 2 girls now, because now with Hallie, and then Audrey's got Mallory, went to Alabama. They have a lot of influence in these coaches' lives, don't they, Kevin? Kevin, here's a question I have for you. I've always noticed this. We all have. After a game, when you're interviewing, especially on live TV, a coach in the locker room after a loss, it is hushness, the quietness of it. Why doesn't anyone ever go in there and go, oh, shit, well, you blew that one. It's just, could you imagine saying that to Pat Dye or Coach Bryant? Kevin, talk about some of those moments, because only you have been there.
Well, we had a perfect example last night at the College World Series as Virginia was surging in the middle innings. I don't know how many times they showed Brian O'Connor's daughter, who works at the University of Florida in the athletic department for Scott Strickland. And it looked like she had a twin. They were her other sister. But as Virginia's coming back, they're taking the lead. They're looking really good. It seemed like every stoppage, the camera went to the daughters in the stands. They did not go to the daughters in the stands in the bottom of the 9th inning, however, as Florida was making its comeback, and obviously the emotions were very different. So I have mixed. I'm not a big fan of locking on to the family members in the stands from a television perspective. And again, it's not balanced. They showed them when things were going well for their team. And what a weird dichotomy. The daughter who works in Florida, she had a Florida tank top on, but then she had a Virginia jersey on over it. And so it's kind of a weird. And you know how fans are. Florida fans are on Twitter as they're falling behind, are saying, Scott Strickland should fire her immediately. He should walk over and tell her, you're out. Which, of course, is ridiculous. And that's emotion. And it's getting the better of people, as it often does, especially in high-profile events like your first game of the College World Series. But that's the perfect example of that's the thrill of victory, or what they thought was going to be a victory, and you capture that, but you don't see the agony of defeat as the Gators were surging back in the 9th.
Well, 2 hours later, they were buying her shots at Rocco's, so I witnessed that.
Holy cow!
There was a great. I'm not sure which Twitter site it was. Was it College Football Reddit? But they said the easiest bet in sports is Florida against Virginia in the postseason, and they had 4 pictures in the frame, and one was last night, of course. One was an NCAA tournament game. One was a bowl game, and the 4th was the shot total at Rocco's, and Florida was well ahead of Virginia. And of course, LSU, retires the trophy. They're so far ahead of everybody else.
Yeah, I can't hang with the LSU. Can you hear me, Rob?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I can't hang with the LSU fans when it comes to doing shots.
Well, hey guys, I gotta tell y'all, at Barrett's, which is a really cool bar and restaurant here, they love us, we love them. And so when they interviewed Tiger Barrett, that's his nickname, Tiger is the owner. When they interviewed me, they go, what was your first thought that went through your mind when you saw LSU get the final out against Kentucky the other night? He goes, it was clearly I had to get on the phone with my beer distributor and my alcohol distributor to double my order.
Hey, Kevin, I was just going to put a question to Kevin, because he's certain. I know he's been all over this, studying and researching it, and Kevin may have opinions on the state of college football. I've found myself sort of like the old man yelling at a cloud, about NIL and portal transfer, and I do believe that as Duff has said and others have said, that there's no conformity. It's different states have different laws that create competitive disadvantages or advantages. Do you see a way out beyond a Congress of all parties to come to the rescue? That does not inspire hope of giving a antitrust exemption to what are some ways that we can, is anything broken, or what would you, if you're commissioner of NCAA football for a day, what would you be doing right now, Kevin?
Well, what I wouldn't be doing is what the SEC did a week or so ago, and that's marching on Washington, looking for help, throwing a Hail Mary to those folks up there. I mean, they can't even agree on whether the sky is blue. So expecting them to solve your problems, fix your issues that you had the opportunity to get ahead of years ago. If you had recognized that this is where we were headed, and you had every indication, it goes back to the O'Bannon trial. You had every indication that this is where we were headed, but they just, the NCAA was bullheaded. They were stubborn. They were, they drew a line in the sand. They were going to hold on to their precious, ancient, antiquated definition of amateurism. And that's why we're in the situation we're in now. But the idea that we're going to have federal legislation that is going to be fair toward all parties is ludicrous. In fact, I wrote a column. It was comical. All of the members of the Alabama delegation to Congress, the 2 senators, the 7 Congress people, they were pumping out those Twitter photos, the grip and grin. They're with Bruce Pearl. They're with Nick Saban. They're with Greg Byrne and John Cohen, and they're all excited. And the text of their tweets, it was comical. It was so similar. Obviously, they got talking points from somewhere, and every one of those tweets, in one shape or form or another, said we're loved visiting with fill in the blank to discuss issues affecting student athletes or student athlete concerns, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. 14 SEC schools sent at least someone to Washington, D.C. Only one of those schools, the University of Florida, sent student athletes as part of its delegation. That's part of the problem right there.
Yeah. That's telling. That's telling.
Yeah, and Kevin, last week, John Hartwell brought this up. He texted me, I think it was last Friday night, about an IRS ruling. Again, I'm not a CPA, I'm not an attorney, but I work with a lot of them. I'm smart enough to know this, bring them in for advice. But John is a CPA by trade, worked with E&Y in public accounting for a while before he became an AD, very cerebral. The IRS said it potentially, these donations to these NIL collectives and whatnot and such, as Carl would say, whatnot, but they may be illegal, may not be deductible. And I know in my wealth management practice in 33 years, there's one radio station that wealthy people have tuned in their car, truck, or SUV, WIIFM. What's in it for me? And if they can't get that tax deduction, I wonder if these NIL collectives will survive, because John talked about the traditional brick and mortar, the Kevin Scarbinsky Center for Journalism Excellence at the University of Florida, a $25 million gift for brick and mortar. That stays there forever. And it's there. But if Scrap Iron Yates signs with Alabama as a wide receiver out of Montgomery, and 6 months in, he doesn't like it, and he's got an NIL deal for $500,000, he walks. We got a problem there. We're going to go to a break. Kevin, if you can break that down, kind of, all of us can, but that's an issue. And I saw all the grip and grins that they did. I mean, hell, I interned for Al Gore when I was in college. They got auto pens, man. That's who's signing all that crap. They ain't signing it. Okay. But I love the way you brought that up. So we're going to take a quick break. We're going to be right back. Sidelines. It's a great day for you to go to Rumble Boxing Gym. Hit that bag. Think of that as the people that make these crazy rules that we live by. We'll be right back.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4 City exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
All right, back here talking with this discussion with this great roundtable, Kevin Scarbinsky in Birmingham, the Birmingham lead. Hey, folks, you know, maybe you don't get the newspaper delivered, as someone said by the 11-year-old kid on his bike the other day. You still need to be reading the newspaper every day. I'll put it this way. Every smart person I know, every client I know that has money, they read a newspaper, either online or in hand. You need to subscribe to the Birmingham lead. Doug Dean, and I thought you were in Tuscaloosa. You're back in Vestavia. Frank Duffy live aboard Bingo 1 in Omaha, and we're here at the Cherry Farm over in Parkin, Arkansas. My wife made a good point, Kevin. I'm going to throw this to you. During the break, Audrey said, yeah, she goes, why can't parents just put their kids on the payroll and say, well, my daughter works at a veterinarian's office, or, you know, my kid plays soccer. He's in 10th grade. I'm putting him on the payroll. We got a real issue here, and wait till the class action lawsuit comes from 98.5% of the student body at Florida or Auburn that says, well, hell, my picture was on the front of the Birmingham News. I want my check. That's coming in from Wesley Duncan down in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, as he sent me a picture of he and I on the front of the Birmingham News. He and Harlan James, the front of the Birmingham News in 1986 after lawyer Tillman did it in reverse. So a lot of crazy stuff. But Kevin went to college, man. Make some sense out of this. And he went to Florida. And
I went to Troy. Hey, shout out to Troy as an undergraduate, and then
exactly
to Florida to graduate school in journalism. Look, there's no easy answer here because you've got conflicting wants and needs, and so you've got the players on the one side, and then you've got the schools on the other, and obviously, and what you see in these proposed. You know, the proposed language of suggested NIL bills, for example, from Tommy Tuberville and Joe Manchin, from others as well, it is very heavily weighted towards the schools and their interests, the coaches' control. I think what we have at heart here, we have a battle for control of college athletics. And it has been so heavily weighted towards the schools from a financial perspective, towards the schools, the coaches, the administrators. And the players have value. They have monetary value. I think we all would agree, as entertaining as it might be to see Nick Saban, you know, fire his headset into the turf when he gets frustrated during the game. You know, I know, Frank, you love to see it when they meet the Tigers. We're not paying money to watch that. We're paying money to watch the players. That's why people watch television, watch the games on TV, which generates the incredible amount of revenue that's pouring into college athletics and continues to do so. It's coming from television, but they're the show. Now, there is value, obviously, to the brand, to LSU, to Auburn, to University of Alabama, Crimson Tide, the Tigers, et cetera. So there's value on both sides. You know, Nick Saban obviously has value. He's well compensated for that. But as those, you know, this imbalance grew to such a gap that it was inevitable something was going to be done. I don't have all the answers. I don't think anyone does. As I said, if it were simple, it would have been solved. But you cannot ignore that the players have financial value. Now, how much are we going to allow them? It's funny when you say that aloud, because if you're a 16-year-old tennis player, you can turn pro. You can make money based on your performance on the tour. Same with a golfer. You know why? If you're a musician, you can cut an album as a college sophomore and make money. You can do a lot of different things in your field. You can do paid internships, et cetera. So college athletes are going to be compensated. We're not rolling that back. It's just we do need an organized system, and this is where as we've become more and more like professional sports. Professional sports have rules. They have a free agency period. It starts on this date. It ends on this date. And if you tamper in any way, there are going to be serious consequences. And tampering is real, and it is a serious issue especially in football and basketball. It's happening. Something's got to be done to get our arms around that. But they have rules for these things. They have a salary cap. The owners and the players, they come together and they negotiate collective bargaining agreements. I think that's where we're headed. I know a lot of people don't want to hear that, and maybe we don't want to see it, but that's where we're headed. I think there has to be representation for the players as a whole, and then for the schools as a whole. That's what the NCAA is. It's supposed to represent schools, the SEC, but we can't lose sight of the student athletes. And again, we're not putting that horse back in the barn. We're not going back to what some people would say the good old days, where you get a scholarship and maybe you get a Pell Grant, and no, that's not happening. From a legal standpoint, that will not happen again.
I don't think anybody is arguing that thematically. I agree with you, but it's the logistical structure is what has to be put in place to make this at least an even playing field, because you're competing against other institutions on that playing field. That's the crazy thing. I mean, what's happening in one state is different than what's happening in another state, one university to another. There has to be some conformity, because we're living in the same universe of competition. It's never going back the way it was. I think the kids do have the right to have this, like you're saying, Kevin. But let's put some parameters, some infrastructure to this, to where the haves and the have-not don't keep diverging. And that's what's happening. And what's made this the tipping point is the amount of money that we're talking about. The industry that college sports has never been bigger. I mean, it's behemoth. So that's what has to happen. And I don't know if it's going to come from Congress or from a commissioner, or from, the NCAA is feckless. It's got to come from someplace, though, because if not, you're going to have not the big five, you're going to have the big three, and you're going to have everybody else, and they're going to be scrambling, and it's going to be not competition.
And here's another issue. Those are great points, Frank, but here's another issue. And it was really well stated, and it was a bit sad to read this from the Missouri athletic director. And she said, essentially, that they had to go to Congress because everybody is so competitive. They're all out for their own best interests. So who is looking out for the best interests of the game, of the sport, of college athletics in general?
All the time.
And the problem is that even within the SEC, Georgia's football recruiting budget is way up here, and Vanderbilt's football recruiting budget isn't. There's a gap even within the most lucrative, competitive, successful conference in major college athletics. And then, how do you also look out for what's one of the best stories at the College World Series? It's Oral Roberts. Oral Roberts, coming back to win the way they did in the ninth inning yesterday against TCU. How do we continue to provide opportunities for the Oral Roberts of the world to get to the College World Series, to compete? They're going to play Florida in a winners bracket game on Sunday, and Florida's one of the best programs in the country. So that we love those moments, and how do we preserve that? Because is it as much fun if it's just every week? And I'll throw this guy out to you guys. Is it as much fun if every week is, it's Auburn, LSU, it's Florida, Georgia, it's Oklahoma, Texas? We love those games, but don't we also love, App State beating Michigan? Sure. Or, going back some time, my friend Jack Crow, Jacksonville State beats Ole Miss in Oxford. Those don't happen a lot. And I know, Doug, I'm sorry, Doug, I shouldn't bring up Jacksonville State with Doug in the room. But
it's okay.
Look at that Fiesta. Look at that Fiesta Bowl with Oklahoma and Boise State. I mean, Cinderella, when she makes an appearance at the ball, magic happens, and that we love that. That's what we love. The unscripted. I mean, sports is the greatest unscripted drama that there is, and we don't want. You're right, Kevin. We don't want to lose that.
We can't.
We got to be careful of
the financial disparities between an Oral Roberts in baseball, between an Oral Roberts and a Florida, for example, or in football between a Jacksonville State and an Auburn or an Ole Miss. It's just at some point, and a lot of people have suggested and or advocated for the Power Five, if you will, breaking away, doing their own thing. That on some level, on a financial level, on a let's level the playing field as best we can, knowing the playing field has never been level in terms of results. Some people would like to see that, but what would that do to, say, the NCAA basketball tournament, which is to me the greatest event in sports, because you get the first day, second day upsets, but generally you don't get San Diego State and Florida Atlantic in the Final Four. We got it this year. But still, UConn, which is a traditional basketball power, they ended up winning the thing. So how do you again, this is almost maybe we need Socrates and Plato. We need greater minds than ours maybe to figure all of this out. Where's Einstein when we need him?
Yeah, Kevin, I'll throw one out at you. In what I do, in addition to this show and wealth management, the estate planning attorneys and CPAs that I work with, we never do they give their money out to their 18 and 19-year-old kids, the big money. I mean, so what I'm in favor of, okay, I'm a capitalist, so I can't go against that. Let's let these guys get this money and gals get this money, put it in an age-banded trust or an incentive-based trust, just like you've got to be at a company for, 3 years or 5 years to be vested in the 401k or to receive stock options or whatever. We need to do – I just have a real problem because I got, 4 kids of my own. Seeing a 19-year-old kid driving into practice in an Aston Martin or a Lamborghini or a Bentley, okay, that if you're a coach, the coaches can do it. Well, the coach is an adult. He's earned that. I can't find a coach that we ever interview on here. John Brady was telling us, coach that, at Samford, LSU, Arkansas State, he said, my first 3 years in coaching, I made about $15,000 a year. I mean, when I first started out of college working in TV, my checks were so small, I used to cash them at the liquor store. I was embarrassed to go to the bank. Okay. So I'm just saying, put it, and Kevin, you got 2 boys and all of us do. This 19 and 20-year-olds, they don't run the show. That I have a real problem with that, but I'm not against them making money. But at the same time, Habitat for Humanity is an example. I did a lot of stories on them over the years, and it was started by a guy, Fuller, out of Americus, Georgia, Jimmy Carter's friend. You, as the home, if you get the home, you are required to put in 500 hours of what they call sweat equity to live in that home. And I mean, the student athletes are getting a lot coming to scholarship wherever you go to school. Even if you're a scout team player, all of us know this. If you go in someone's office and they lettered for 4 or 5 years at Florida or Troy or Alabama, whatever, even if they didn't play, you're going to respect and go, you went through all that and you didn't even really play or whatever. Yeah, you're going to be a hell of a salesman, son.
Rob,
Dan's glad to meet you.
The only question I would have, and it's this analogy really limps, almost all of them do. Kevin's the expert on turning a phrase. But if you look at the NFL brand, which is hard to beat, it's hard to argue with what they accomplish. They create competitive, a level playing, as level as you can get. Yes, some franchises have built-in advantages, but what they do is they draft. They have a draft. And so over time, you're not going to have the same Super Bowl champion over and over and over. With all due respect to great champions, Alabama and now Georgia is crashing the party. So my question would be, we'll start with Kevin. What gadgets and policies and congressional help, God help us, is available to the NCAA to prevent the fact that Texas A&M, Alabama, Ohio State, Georgia, and a few others are going to have a war chest that amounts to having 3 or 4 first-round draft picks every year, not just one. Kevin.
Wow. Well, one thing is, first thing you got to do is get a hold of the calendar. And that's one thing they can and do control. For example, the December signing day in football, which sounded like a good idea at the time, and I think it falls under that category, is not good. It doesn't really achieve what I think they wanted it to achieve. My idea for years has been, okay, I like the idea of an early signing period, but it should be in late July, early August, before high school seasons start, before college seasons start, because these players are visiting more and more schools on unofficial visits earlier and earlier. Many of them have a very good idea where they want to go before they start their senior high school seasons. So give them the opportunity to sign then. Put a clause in if the coach leaves by X date for whatever reason, and you can get out of your NLI and you can be re-recruited and sign in February. Keep that date. Plus, it allows coaches. This is what's always bothered me. We see this, and again, the burden we're putting. We don't think about this, especially think of assistant coaches who at Friday night they're at a high school football game. Saturday they got to get back to their college for their game. That's an incredible grind we're placing on coaches. Kirby Smart has been eloquent talking about this. The number of hours those guys spend. And again, the head coaches are well compensated. Assistants are better compensated than ever, especially coordinators, but even position coaches. But we got to get a hold of the calendar. And I think that's one. And that includes when signing days come, when the transfer portal is open. Did you guys realize, I didn't even realize this till the other day. My son was telling me the baseball transfer portal was just open.
Yes.
Before the seasons, right in the middle of the postseason. In fact, I believe, and Franz could speak to this, Florida had a player who was going to go to Florida State, so he didn't get to travel to Omaha. It's just, you don't see that before you don't have free agency before the Super Bowl. You don't have free agency right before it's postseason. It's the calendars crazy. Themselves are madness. That's where I would start with. Let's get the calendars under control and have some common sense involved here.
Yeah. Jump in, Franz. I know you wanted to say something on that.
Florida has 4 guys in the portal already. Yep. LSU has guys in the portal already. Also, Tennessee has guys in the portal. Now, granted, all these guys are guys that are not on the 27-man roster. And that's, quite frankly, that's when you're going to get them. But here's the thing. Florida already has a commitment from Kelly Austin, who's probably going to be a first-round draft pick, who's an all Pac-12 pitcher who played for a rotten UCLA team, and he's going to come to Florida, which is going to be, again, loaded to the bear next year. And so Florida's already got a commitment from him. And
Franz, hold those thoughts. We're going to take a quick break because I want to hear this. I also want to hear about that Bright Scholars program they have in Florida. It would be nice to have something like that in Alabama. Legislature, if you're listening, take a hint. We'll be right back. Hi, Rob Browne back here with this round table, man. This is great stuff. Franz, you were on a roll before the break in line with what Doug and Frank and Kevin are saying. So, again, the Bright Scholars program gets my interest, but you were on point. Let's keep going.
Well, here's the thing: is already, we've had people who are transferring and committing. Florida's already got a commitment. A kid named Kelly Austin. played for a bad UCLA team. No excuse for them to ever go 28-24, particularly with the number of cupcakes they load up with early in the season. But Kelly Austin has Major League Baseball stuff. Florida's losing 2 starting pitchers. Guess who's going to be the Saturday night starter for the Gators next year? It's going to be Kelly Austin. And trust me, they got 11 pitchers on their recruiting class, and like 7 of them are lefties. Florida's going to be nobody's going to feel bad about the Gators. But to what Kevin said, there is a disparity here. You don't see first-round pitchers saying, gee, that Oral Roberts program looks pretty darn good. And if I go there, I get to wear a coat and tie to my classes every day. And I can't cuss and I can't drink and I can't go out with women, etc. like that. Let's face it, it's kind of like, what Hugh Freeze did at Liberty goes beyond what anybody could have ever expected. He got good football players to come up there. They're 19-year-olds and 20-year-olds filled with testosterone and willing to say, I'll be a Boy Scout for the next 4 years. I mean, my God, one of the if he can do that at Liberty, I hate to think what he's going to do at Auburn. My gosh. And people forget.
He's got a lot of Boy Scouts down there.
People forget that he is the only coach since Nick Saban went to Alabama to beat Nick Saban back-to-back years. Nobody else has ever done that. I mean, Gus 3 times, but Gus never beat him back-to-back. And
wait, Franz. Les Miles did it. Les Miles did it in 09 and 10.
Yeah.
If I recall correctly.
Oh, yeah.
Not 9, 10 and 11. 10 and 11 in the regular season, and then paid for it in the BCS championship game after the 11 season.
No, 09 Alabama was undefeated, but 2010.
Ask Frank about whether that was an interception on the throw to Julio Jones in Bryant-Denny Stadium or not.
Let me tell you, that decision came from on high in Birmingham, not from Baton Rouge. And by the way, the national championship game you're referring to, Kevin, we call it the Great Oklahoma State Train Robbery. That's who we should have been playing in the dome, but I digress.
Kevin, what happened? This is what's so crazy. 2010, LSU did beat Alabama. 2011, they beat them. You're right. That was
game of the century, 9-6.
Game of the century. Take 157. Let's go. And then they played them a second time in 2011, and Alabama won 21-0. You're right. There's so many that Hugh Freeze, I think, is going to be successful. At least you're starting to see Auburn recruiting again, guys. And Kevin, man, Jordan Hill covers 24/7 Sports, covers Georgia. He's on here with us every week. He said there's a new guy coming up there to join him in Athens to cover recruiting and all. And I said, he's been at Auburn the last 3 years. He said, yeah. I said, God, he hadn't been doing anything. Looks like he'll be excited to get to cover some recruiting. But now Auburn's back in the game. That open for business sign is in the front window. But guys, I tell you, all of us agree that the athletes should be compensated. But don't we also all agree if you do it right, you bust your ass for 4 or 5 years, you go to practice, and even if you don't play, the only time you go out on the field is to run out and hug your family on senior day, that if you do that, you got that letter up. I mean, I know from in business, we're all the same age. You hire people that were college athletes, men and women, it doesn't matter. Black, white, it doesn't matter. We're Division 1, 2, 3. If they survive 4 or 5 years of that, you got a worker. You got a fighter. You got someone who ain't ever going to quit on you. And that's why we love sports. And that's why I love reading Kevin and reading Franz and Doug, God, with the dose. All of y'all are great writers. We can get all caught up where we're hyperventilating. We're so excited. But when you read it, it starts to make sense. Y'all are mobile artists is what you are as writers. That's why we better fight like hell for college athletics. We better fight for the writers, the right to write. We lose the writers, we got a bunch of quick sound bites, and that ain't going to work.
Rob, you look at signs of health, and they're not everywhere, but there are some. And I don't know, but I suspect this may be replicated at other SEC football programs. A little bit to my surprise, Auburn is close to setting a record for football season ticket sales. And now it helps to have number one defending Georgia and right on their heels Alabama at home this season.
Yeah.
But I think some of it is the excitement of what Hugh Freeze is doing on the recruiting trail, and probably just the importance of getting in on it while you can for this expanded SEC with teams like Oklahoma and Texas coming to town eventually.
Well, there is that's going back to the reveal show. There's clearly a buzz about those schools joining the league. It's almost as if so many people in their minds have fast forwarded past the 2023 season that we can't wait for 2024. We're so excited, but a lot of exciting things are going to happen starting September 2nd, in this year. But we all love something new and bright, and the bright shiny objects, and that's what Oklahoma and Texas are. But I have a feeling that both of those programs are going to discover that it's a little different here.
Yeah.
That it's different going to Gainesville and Baton Rouge, and especially Auburn after dark, than it is Manhattan, Kansas, and Ames, Iowa. Places like that. It's just different here.
Prayers lifted.
Franz, jump in here.
Go ahead, Franz.
It is a grind in the SEC, and it doesn't matter the sport. This is top to bottom. They call the Pac-12 Conference of Champions. Well, yeah, you include the women's sperm whale harpooning team and stuff like that. They are, but we don't have field hockey and water polo here in the SEC to boost our championships. I was looking at the Directors Cup standings, and you got to include 4 sports. You got to include football, men's and women's basketball, and baseball have to be included in there every year in the standings. But then all of a sudden you can get schools that load up on field hockey and stuff like that. North Carolina doesn't have a decent team in anything except sports like soccer and field hockey. They're dynamite in those sports, and they load up on them. And you think, wow, what an athletic program. But what's at the top? Because what's at the top is making money. Back to something that Kevin said. We got to come up with something to protect football. And, I know every football, there are the folks who believe that we should all be driving electric cars, think that football should be more like soccer. And I understand that. Wait,
hold on, Frank, I got to call a timeout. My sons drive electric cars, and I don't want football to look anything like soccer. Just so we're clear.
I love that.
But here, of course, people don't realize that electric cars don't do anything for the environment. What we got to do to get the lithium for one battery
Correct.
Destroys 10 acres.
10
acres absolutely destroyed. But that's another story. My point being this: we got to get a lid on football. And in doing that, I think this, and here are a couple things I believe. Okay, if you have an early signing period, let it be in June or July. I would say keep July off limits because coaches do have to have some time off. Put it in June and tell the kid, if you sign in June, you cannot transfer until your sophomore year. Unless there is a coaching change, or unless there is a family emergency. And make it so that any kid who transfers cannot transfer if he does not have at least a 2.5 GPA. You can't have kids. I know that I'm not going to name names here because I'd have to reveal stuff I know about transcripts, which would not be good. But I know of one kid that signed to an SEC school. This is his third school. and he's left the other two because he couldn't cut it academically, and now he's going to an SEC school that he thinks that, you know, okay, I can major in. They've already told me that what I can major in. This guy has been at 3 schools already. This will be his 5th year, and I promise you, he doesn't have a decent GPA. I don't think he's got a prayer of graduating. This stuff happens, you know, and we've got to get a grip on this. You know, what's the old saying? The devil is in the details, or something, some sort of old saying like that. We look at the big picture. We don't look at the details. Okay. What's the kid transferring for? Okay. Is he transferring because he needs a place to play? Okay. I understand that. I think every single coach out there understands that. And a lot of coaches, quite frankly, clean house every year, and they bring that kid in and say, son, I know you're trying hard and I appreciate you, but you're not cutting it here. I think here's the deal. If the coach wants to cut the kid, then the coach has to also be required that their football program has to pay for the kid to finish school. If the kid cannot find a new place to play, then school A, which kicked him out, has to be obligated to pay for the rest of his education. Room, board, tuition, books. Now, that has to be the rule. But you got to get a cap on the transfers and the signing date. I like February because kids can play their high school season, then take visits up to signing day and make a legitimate decision. So
it was cleaner. It was cleaner.
Yeah.
Yes, it was.
Let me throw in. Here's another thing, guys. There's 2 things I just read about. They're going to make it. The transfer portal windows are this past year were December 5th, January 18th, April 15th, April 30th. If you're a graduate transfer, you can leave at any time. But the new rules are they're going to be really sticky on about immediate eligibility. Number 1, you've got to be feeling endangered. You know, you don't feel safe somehow at your current campus. The second one is you got to have serious mental health problems. And they're saying you've got to have a stack of paperwork to document all of that. We all know about paperwork, the paper trail, but that can slow it down. Kevin, Frank, Doug, Franz. I mean,
you mean a 6'6", 365-pound offensive tackle can say, I don't feel safe on my campus?
Yeah, that's right. Kevin, I mean, jump in here and on this, because this is a hell of a, I like this discussion.
Well, Franz brought up something that no one talks about enough, if at all, and that this is, for the time being, still college athletics. There's a college aspect to this. And Franz, I like your thought that there should be incentives and disincentives to transferring. So you really are thoughtful before you make a move, and tying them to academics in some way, whether, as you suggested, whether you have to have a 2.5, say. So you're not just shopping for, you know, a basket weaving degree somewhere that will allow you to stay eligible to continue to compete. I like that. Again, this is still college athletics. So college should be part, you know, the academics should be part of the equation. You know, you should have to accomplish something in academics, just like, you know, making progress towards a degree is supposed to be part of the deal when it comes to staying eligible to compete. And Doug, obviously you remember well, and I broke the story eons ago about Brent Fullwood, the incredible running back, ran harder than any player I've ever been around, ran angry because he was an angry young man. Yeah. And there were reasons for that in his upbringing and in his home life. And it was sad. But Pat Dye, even though Brent Fullwood essentially his senior year stopped going to class, he went home to deal with family issues in Florida.
Yeah.
But Pat Dye allowed him to continue to play. And they passed a rule then that you couldn't do that. That you had to still be a student in good standing. And I understand that. And that's really the way it should be. So how can we keep college in the equation while recognizing that they are generating the amount of revenue that's pouring into college athletics, as was mentioned earlier, just keeps going up and up. And that's why, guys, I've advocated for, and I don't really see a downside to this, because some of these guys are going to play at the professional level, most are not, in any sport. It's a small percentage.
Correct.
But why can't we have a major? Why can't football in some way, shape, or form be a major? And you take classes in personal finance. How do you handle that money that's pouring into you that you're earning?
Yes. Yes.
You take classes in public relations, public speaking.
Yeah.
First of all, every college student should probably take a public speaking course. But if you have aspirations of being a professional athlete, even college athletes, you're going to sit in front of a camera with a microphone in your face, and often in adverse situations after a game.
Yeah.
And you should be able to handle that situation. And that's, we should prepare. Again, we're supposed to be preparing these young men and women for life, right? Well, that's what we should be doing for them.
What we do, Kevin, we have football coaches who say, okay, I'm going to send out the same 3 yahoos every single week to meet with the press, and the rest of my team you can't talk to. We used to have a deal at the University of Florida. They'd come off the practice field. We could walk with them and talk with them, pick out the athlete we wanted, unless the coaches specifically said, this guy is off limits. And they would get Urban Meyer, for all the crap he gets, would say, okay, this one you can't talk to because of this. So you left him alone. But you could walk with him from the practice field over to where they to the locker rooms, which are in the stadium. Of course, that's all changed now because the practice field is part of the facility. But
hold that thought, Fran. We're going to take a tight break here. We're going to come back for one more segment. I want to hear this because it is true what you're saying. Kevin knows it as well. Right back.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
We are rolling today on this round table. We're going to be joined just a second by Kyle Odell is going to join us here in this last segment for some fun stuff. And Kevin and Franz and Frank is in the witness protection program here temporarily. Here he comes back. You talk about I remember, Kevin, at Auburn, there were players, they were told, do not let this guy anywhere near a microphone. I'm like, why? They're going, have you ever talked to him? You know, I know that it was rough. And I had some classes with Brent Fullwood from St. Cloud. And I remember friends of mine who were at practice and played on the team with him. They said, yeah, that 1986, the Iron Bowl, his courage that he put out there, playing hurt, getting knocked down, going back in, having to be carried off the field. He's a warrior. And you know what he does now? Yeah, 86. Yeah. He brings his kids up to Auburn. He's a high school coach now. And Kevin, you're right about that. We all know the stories. Y'all know the stories. And there's a lot of things. And I am not, hell will freeze over before I ever talk about that on this show or anything, what I know privately. But that's life. We all got things. And that's just how and that's some of the stuff, you know, you would be in a coach's office and they'd say, hey, keep this off the record. But Franz, finish. You were saying something, and I want to, hopefully Kyle will be on here with us in just a second.
Well, here's the thing. We used to have access to players, okay? And then all of a sudden, it started changing. And now it's to the point that you get 2 or 3 guys, and we'll get them the same time. We had a guy back during the Will Muschamp era at Florida that hardly played at all. But every week when we came for the day that they let the players out, we got this same guy, and I counted up his snaps, and it wasn't very many every game. I mean, here's a guy that may have been playing 15 snaps a game, and we're getting him for media. What does he know? Well, the reason we got him was the coach didn't want somebody else coming out there. Yeah. They wanted somebody who really didn't know what was going on, because if this guy knew what was going on, he'd been playing.
Yeah, he started at left elocution.
Look, there's a fine line. You don't want to embarrass your player. If they are truly uncomfortable, for example, it's not that they're not well spoken, but they're just very uncomfortable. Look, public speaking, most people have, the old joke that they did a survey and, your biggest fear, and public speaking was number 1 and death was number 2, which meant that at a funeral, more people would rather be in the casket than giving the eulogy. So it's real. So I understand that, but is there anything more antithetical? How's that for a 25-cent word? Antithetical to education than shielding young men and women and not allowing them to talk. That calls into question the people you're recruiting on the front end.
Yeah.
Antithetical. I'm gonna have to refer to my LSU Florida dictionary. Hang on a second.
Well, here, you make good points, and here's what we're doing though. We're not letting kids be kids anymore. We have to. I mean, realistically, guys, we got to let these kids be able to have a conversation, stuff like that. Ben Troop, I remember when Ben Troop all of a sudden gets out there in front of everybody, and we had never seen Ben Troop because he'd been pretty much an obscure tight end. But his last 2 years in college, he became an All-American. And I'll never forget, all of a sudden we have access to Ben Troop, and we discover what an articulate, fun guy he is.
Yeah. Love him.
And this is the thing that we missed. I mean, granted, we had to endure 4 years of Chris Leak, which was saying the politically correct thing. Yes, I wear my shoelaces clean every time because we can't have any dirt. Okay. Tell me something about football. I throw spirals. Okay, great. Tell me something I don't know. But we had to endure that. But then, on the other hand, you get a kid out there like Brandon Spike, and you never knew what he was going to say, and he was fabulous. I mean, I could deal with Brandon Spikes all day long. I mean, this is a kid who told me, he says, I hit people and they go down. That's what I do. Okay,
well, I loved it. I mean,
anybody ever said playing linebacker better than that?
Hey, let's bring in Kyle. Come on in here with us on this round table. Tell people a little about your background, what you're going to be doing and all, whatever, and I want to hear this because we got Kevin Scarbinsky, the Birmingham lead. And again, Franz Beard, GatorBaitMedia.com, Frank Duffy, live in Omaha aboard Bengal One. And this guy, Doug Dean, over in Vestavia, Alabama. You know him. But anyway, Kyle, how you doing? Yeah.
Hey, doing good, guys. I appreciate you having me on this morning. Just a little background about myself. I've worked in recruiting operations when I was a student at Alabama from 2009 to 13. Worked in the football recruiting department there 2010 to 12. And then from there, went on to be a area scout for the San Francisco 49ers from 2013 to 2018.
Nice. Well, your credentials already surpassed at least 3 of us, Kyle.
Four for sure.
Three of us combined.
Yeah. I mean, Scarbinsky is at least been in the locker room. Kevin's been in the locker rooms, been in these head coaches' offices. But Rob, if you don't mind,
Yeah, back when those places were not off limits.
yeah. If you don't mind me putting a question or two to Kyle, and thanks to our guys. We have a duty as old guys to start developing the next generation of Rob Browns, right? And Kyle certainly has the chops to offer some fun opinions. I know you can't give away trade secrets on the consensus, always number 1 or 2 signing class that Coach Saban has brought to Alabama to the glee of their fans. But just in terms of what you can talk about, what is unique as you got to experience it up close about that recruiting operation that Saban has, besides winning championships and doing the things that certainly has attracted 5 stars? Your thoughts on that, Kyle?
Yeah, definitely. I would say kind of from where I was starting at in 2010 to where it became by the time I left, even to now, it's just the size and number of people involved in that operation and how everything is all about identifying early. It's even then in 2010 into 2011, guys weren't getting offered until they were juniors. I mean, every now and then, you had seniors, your Josh Jacobs, those guys who didn't pop up until his senior year. But now it's all 8th, 9th graders. There's these Elite 11 camps, and so football part of whether this guy can play for us or not, it's really taken off the table there once you throw that offer out. From there, it sells and marketing for the next 4 or 5 years. So I think it's a completely different mindset than what it was then when you were trying to fill a class. You're not worried about filling a class now. You're worried about accepting, I guess, commitments and from the right guys. And then, you're also having to levy that with who you might lose early to the draft, who might hit the portal. I think it's a much more complicated situation year to year now than it has probably ever been.
And I'm sure the risk has gone up when you got the Seaborn quarterback kid at Thompson that everybody's talking about, but at least he went out, for God's sakes, and won the state championship as an 8th grader. God, what a world. But the risk being that they have to offer kids a lot younger, and you don't really know which ones are going to bloom rapidly and be SEC ready or not. So you're probably offering, that's spawned this new term, not an offer, but a committable offer, Kyle.
Yeah, I think the only one you didn't have to worry about that was when, Leonard Fournette was getting offered by everyone in 8th grade. He already looked like he was 22 at the time. So I think you were pretty safe that he was gonna have an SEC caliber body and talent. But like you're saying, I think the Seaborn kid, obviously what he did was incredible, and the talent is there. But is he going to be 5'11"? Is he going to be 6'4"? Who really knows? It's all a projection. It's all a guess, and I think that's probably the most difficult part about it. As you're identifying and offering these guys super early, there's such a growth and maturation process that happens between the ages of 15 to 18 that you really don't know exactly what you're buying.
One of the other guys may have a question for you, Kyle.
Well, I was just going to say, they all don't look like Leonard Fournette when they're in 9th grade.
No,
those ones are easy.
Kevin or Franz, y'all remember, any of us remember, wasn't it Damon Allen was in 7th or 8th grade up in Indiana when Bobby Knight said, "Young man, I'm going to offer you an opportunity to come have a chair thrown at you," or whatever. That was a big deal back then. Remember that, Kevin?
Damon Bailey.
Yeah.
He was a big deal in the state of Indiana from the time he was in middle school. And he was almost predestined to go play basketball at IU for Bob Knight, not necessarily for his betterment. But I'm interested, Kyle, can you put into perspective for us the amount of information that those coaches, that is compiled for those coaches to make their evaluations, make their decisions? Someone told me just the other day that Alabama they have a full-time person, and all that person does is compile the name and critical info on every single player in the transfer portal, which is a full-time job given the number of players in the transfer portal.
We have 4 people doing that at Florida.
Yeah, for sure. I think what you're saying, like that role now, that is, college recruiting departments have really had to develop into NFL scouting departments in terms of gathering not only information about what kind of player they are. I think the film is going to tell you 90% of that, whether you think they can play for you, whether they fit your system. but it's all the things that go beyond the film: work ethic, intelligence, character, those things, and which is, what NFL scouts spend pretty much the entire fall. 95% of that is based around that. But I think that's the riskiest part of the transfer portal is, obviously, if you've got a need and you're out looking, you need to fill it. But at the same time, how's this guy going to merge into our locker room? Is this guy going to be a locker room cancer? Very rarely. There's been the exceptions, but you get that guy that comes in and is charismatic and has that magnetic personality that fits well. But at the same time, you're trying to talk to high school coaches, academic counselors, anyone that they've interacted with, knows about their past, their background, family situation. You've got to take all that into account when making a decision on this. And so, like you said, the information you're gathering, and that's why there's a full-time job for it now.
Kyle, let me tell, because I know that we're going to be tight on time, and Rob can get you back on the show down the road. But
absolutely,
let's move to your experience at the Niners. Most of us fans, the extent of our knowledge, speaking for myself, is the movie Draft Day with Kevin Costner at the NFL and the talent acquisition and all that goes into that. And Kyle would be the first to say his in 2013 through 2018 working for the 49ers. What a great gig. But you can also tell us the unromantic side of that and being on the road and sub-zero temperatures. What were a few highlights that maybe the average fan would not know about, Kyle?
Oh, I mean, the Ramada Inn in El Paso, Texas, the Fairmont Inn and, Billings, Montana. There's several of those. It really is probably just the travel and the number of, days consecutively on the road. A lot of teams structure that by between 10 to 14 days and then 3 days off. And so, you're driving your car out, end of July, 1st of August. I'm just thinking of, I lived in Denver 3 years in the territory I covered out there, which was classified as the Midlands. But, you drive out from Denver and, you work 14 days, school to school each day. And, you look up and you're in Iowa, in Ames, Iowa, at Iowa State. And then you're going home, flying home and for 3 days and renting a car while you're home and then flying back to your car and picking up from there, and it's another 10 or 14. And it's the constant, not every day's the same. Each school has different restrictions when you can and can't visit, and, who you can and can't talk to, if you can or can't watch practice. It's just, I guess the rhythm of life is difficult in the fall when you're on the road as a scout.
Guys, Kyle follows.
You guys became like the Major League Baseball scouts of the 20s, 30s, and 40s, going out there to find talent, and that's what differentiates your team from another team. It's literally Back to the Future what you guys have to do now. And you got to recruit and keep them.
Kyle has a granular knowledge. He's going to be humble about it, but I won't let him. Of the Death Star, the Alabama Crimson Tide, who I know their fans look forward to regaining that moniker from the Georgia Bulldogs this season. But Kyle, in the limited time we've got particularly for Alabama fans, what are a couple of things they should really be excited about on this roster? In addition to having the number one signing class beyond what else is new with Saban, right? And maybe a thing or two to worry about, like most every program is going into the season.
I think as a fan, you're going to be excited to see just fresh schemes on offense and defense this year. And I think, change is good sometimes. And nothing against the job either of those guys did the past couple of years. But I think, getting a young guy in like Tommy Rees is exciting to a degree. Now, what that's going to look like, I think, as fans, we're all excited about the thing we've never seen before. So, we might have to revisit that week 6 and see how it's looking. But at the same time, I think, just seeing something fresh, I think there's going to be a different energy about it. And, just with what else happening around the landscape of the SEC, I think there's, a lot to be excited about. And I think they're obviously have the talent and the personnel, and the recruiting is what it's been to make another run at it. So it's just going to be, week to week, sweating it out in the SEC. Which
I can guarantee you Nick Saban is loving that he gets to, of all things, play the underdog, the disrespected runner-up to Georgia Bulldogs. And in case Georgia fans wondered, has anybody ever three-peated Kevin, in my memory at least?
No, not in the poll era. Not since the AP poll started in 36, I believe.
Yeah, it was wasn't it in the 30s Minnesota did it? Because my dad remembers. He was a young kid.
They didn't win 3 APs. Here's something.
Okay.
Here's something that I think should be required, and the NCAA, in its infinite wisdom, eliminated it. And that is, we got to be able to get coaches on campuses again, so they can sit down and talk and go. For example, let's say Kyle is a stud quarterback, but he may have and he's got an IQ of 180 and whatever like that. I need to go though and find out if talking to his teachers, if he's too smart. And by that I mean we've had guys like that can come in there and they overanalyze everything, and they take natural talent that's here and they bring it down to here because they're too smart. They overanalyze it. You don't know that in our current system. And you got to be able to let coaches go on campuses and talk. Find out, for example, if that stud defensive tackle, maybe some teacher says, yeah, he has this bad habit of taking girls into the bathroom and raping them. But, we love him just the same. You got to find that stuff out. And stuff like that, it sounds ludicrous to say that. That stuff happens. We get kids on campus who have done that. Aaron Hernandez was at Florida, the most polite, thoughtful, witty, charming kid we've ever had here. You talk to him, and he was fun to talk to. Now, what we didn't know was, hey, put the guy in private, and he'd had so many concussions, his brain was mush, and you didn't know he was a psychopath. But you didn't know that talking to him. But here's the thing. If coaches could have spent the time with him on campus, they may have said, yeah, he's talented, but I don't know about that boy. You know?
I mean, all of y'all, this is a great – we definitely got to get you back on because, Kevin, you and Franz and Frank and Doug and I know, and Kyle, you know this. You're a little younger than us, but I've got kids, 23 to 34, 4 of them. And y'all get things that maybe we don't. I know that we don't. But I remember, you remember Rick Trickett, the kindly coach who never said a bad word ever. He was up at the Memphis Auburn Club one time, and someone asked him a question about a couple of things. One of them about a junior college transfer, that big lineman who was a big-time recruit at Auburn had, and he goes, well, I don't even know their names. All I ever see him laying in the hot tub saying he's hurt, so I don't pay attention to him. Another thing he said was very pertinent. He said, there was a player that was from Poplarville, Mississippi that Auburn signed, top 10 player in Mississippi, an offensive lineman, and he was a pre-med major. And he said, he's all right, but he's wanting to be a doctor. That's what he's thinking about. And he threw another Auburn player out there from Montgomery, from Sidney Lanier, and he said, I asked him, I said, what are you going to do about school? He goes, I do what I got to do. And that kid had like a 11-year career in the NFL. It's not saying that they're not smart. Ben Troop on this show. I've gotten to know Ben. Thank y'all for introducing him to me. I'm going to tell you something. This show affords us, God bless it, the opportunity to talk with great people like y'all. We can't do it without you. But getting to know these student athletes, talking to Ben Troop a lot, and you just can't. You learn, y'all, friends. You and Kevin and Doug also with the AU Dose. You get to talk to these guys, and I do too. In those conversations, most of them, it's off the record and all, but they're real people, and they got incredible stories, but you got to know about them. And that's what I love about when you read the great writing, the Birmingham Lead, GatorBetMedia.com, AU Dose. Kyle, you get it. Frank, you get it. There are incredible stories behind the scenes, and, nobody needs to see. What did Mark Twain say? If you like the law and you like sausage, do yourself a favor. Don't ever go to a hog rendering plant or the state legislature when the doors are closed and the cigars are lit. That's just the way it is.
Hey, Rob, I got to ask Kyle, anything big coming up in your future the next several weeks, Kyle, just so for the audience?
got the first child arriving here in about 3 weeks. So,
Congratulations.
Hey, Mazel.
Doug was so nice. They'll go ahead and get me the Phil Still preview, so that'll pass the hours by.
Get you a magnifying glass. It's like type 7 font, right, Kevin?
Enjoy every second, Kyle, because you're going to blink, and the next thing you know, your first son will be a sophomore at the University of Florida. Your second son will be graduating high school, going to Gainesville in August, and you'll wonder where the time went.
That sounded autobiographical.
Rob has his manuals about how to raise kids. I mean, what do you have, 14 of them, Rob? I mean, I don't even remember.
But it is fun. And let me, you know what, that's the thing about it. I would give anything for them to be 6 years old and wanting to go do stuff with me. Now they just text me. And but no, we talk a lot, but mainly it's texting.
Asking you to Venmo.
Venmo, that's right.
Yeah,
great show, Rob.
Let me close out. We run out of time. I just want to say, Kevin, Buddy Martin's wife passed away Thursday night. Joni and Franz, you've been down there, and I hope Buddy knows how much we love him and care about him, and he's in our prayers. And he's been one of the reasons this show has gotten off to what it is, you and all of y'all. So cannot thank you enough. And so I hope you're listening, Buddy, and you're in our prayers, and love you and look forward to having you whenever you're ready to come back. But I know Ben Troop was so upset yesterday. He texted me early in the morning, said, I can't even be on the show. And y'all got a great family of people around him.
Joni Martin was, I'll tell you what, she was, I used the word I wrote about her, radiant. And there was a radiance about her wherever she was. And I got to tell you what, I know Buddy, I love him to death, but he couldn't have made it without Joni. And Joni was one of these people that I had a fifth grade teacher named Miss Tillis. We said she had X-ray eyes because she could see trouble and she could bring you aside and she knew what to ask somehow, some way, intuitively. And Joni Martin was like that. She could talk to you, and in 2 seconds she could discern whether you had a problem or not, and whether you needed to talk to her. And she could do it without making you feel like she's interrogating you. And you're left always feeling better about yourself and better about the world you live in than you did before you began the conversation. Wow. And so, she was my friend. I love her today, and I'm gonna miss Joni.
Our love and prayers to Buddy and the whole Gator Nation.
Amen.
Yeah, really. Yeah, and it's absolutely true. And listen, man, most often we see the face of Christ in the least among us. We're the blessed people, the greatest country in the history of the world. Freedom of speech, man. And subscribe. Kevin, tag out. Let them know how they can follow you, and subscribe to the Birmingham Lead.
Birmingham Lead, LEDE.com. Daily newspaper thrown right in your inbox. I write twice a week, Sundays and Thursdays. Check it out.
Okay. It's great stuff. And Franz Beard, GatorBaitMedia.com. Check him out. Also, the Buddy Martin Show, Monday through Thursdays, 9 p.m. Eastern. Facebook, Twitter, it's everywhere. Everybody on this round table, everybody listening, and all of our sponsors, thank you so much. Have a great day. We're out of here. We'll see you Monday.
Great job, Kyle.